All right, time to go teach. Hello and welcome to this next episode of Tutor Tutors, where we are continuing our tour of the cell, and today we are going to specifically be looking at the first part of photosynthesis. This is the first episode of a two-part series on the process of photosynthesis, which occurs in the chloroplast of our plant cells. So let's look at it. First things first, we are just going to review the structure of the chloroplast, just reminding ourselves what the chloroplast is made up of and how it is set up. Next, we're going to be looking at the steps that are involved in the light-dependent reactions, which is one of the two different stages of photosynthesis. And lastly, we are going to state the reactants and the products that are involved in those light-dependent reactions, just looking at a big overview of the whole process. So let's get this started. Photosynthesis, well, here we go. We have our chloroplast right here, and you should remember it's that double membrane system, and it has these structures on the inside called the thylakoid. And thylakoids are those membranous sacs that happen to be stacked on top of each other, and those stacks are called granum, and in plural will be grana. Well, the thylakoid, that is where the light-dependent reactions take place. That's where the chlorophyll is going to capture the light energy, so that way the light energy can be used and be converted to chemical energy. So this is where our energy conversion takes place. That's our light-dependent reactions, and that's going to be in the thylakoid membrane. The light-independent reactions, the second stage of photosynthesis, that is also referred to as the Calvin cycle, and it will take place in the stroma. It is going to end up building our energy storage molecule. It's going to get us to the point where now we are able to store that chemical energy. Conversion is going to occur first, and that's not going to build our energy storage molecule. But the products of the energy conversion are going to be used to then build our storage molecules. We will not be looking at the light-independent reactions today. Today, we are only going to be focusing on the first stage, the light-dependent reactions. So when we look at it, first thing to think about is this is called an electron transport chain, and it's built using specific enzymes that happen to be in the membrane of our thylakoids. We can see these different enzymes right here that make a chain in the membrane. That is our electron transport chain. And it allows for electrons to be passed from one enzyme to the next enzyme to the next enzyme. They are able to capture light energy. These photosystems, these specific enzymes that we call photosystems, that's where the chlorophyll is contained. So that's why the plant cell has that green color, because the chlorophyll happens to not be very good at absorbing green light energy. If it was really good at absorbing green light, then it would not appear green. It reflects that green light, and so the green light goes into our eyes, and that's why we are able to see green. So let's look at this whole structure. Now here on the inside of our thylakoid, we happen to have water, and outside of our thylakoid, that would be the stroma, and this is our thylakoid membrane right here. And just so we can have a little key, oxygen, hydrogen ions, and electrons are going to be represented by these different colors. And first things first. So light energy is going to be absorbed by our electron transport chain, specifically photosystem 2. And when light energy is absorbed by photosystem 2, we end up having this process occur that's called photolysis. So our water molecule is going to enter into our photosystem 2. It is going to get broken down into its different parts. We have an oxygen atom, we have 2 hydrogen ions, and we have 2 electrons that are now free. The electrons came from the hydrogen atoms, which now are hydrogen ions. Those hydrogens do not have their electrons anymore, and the oxygen is actually just by itself. These excited electrons are going to move through the electron transport chain. They will move from one enzyme to the next. They'll get passed on. And they are excited electrons because of the energy from the light. The oxygen, it's going to bond with the next oxygen that will be released because oxygen atoms do not exist stably by themselves. So you're not going to find just monatomic oxygen out there. It will always end up bonding with something else. And in this case, we are about to free up another oxygen atom from a different water. And we build more hydrogen ions. So now we're going to build an oxygen molecule down here. And we are going to release more hydrogen ions. And this process will continue on and on and on. As the light just continuously is hitting the photosystem too, water will continuously get broken, and that will release more oxygen gas, and that will produce more hydrogen ions, and that will build more of our electrons in our electron transport chain. Now, we're also going to end up having adenosine diphosphate bind to another enzyme. It will enter the active site of the enzyme called ATP synthase. ATP synthase literally means it is an enzyme that produces ATP. So the first part of ATP is going to enter into the active site. It is the adenosine diphosphate, the adenosine that has two phosphates attached to it, and all we need now is the other phosphate to be added to it. We're just continuing this process here. And the oxygen can just diffuse right out of the membrane because, remember, it's a small nonpolar molecule. So it can go right through a phospholipid bilayer, no problem. So the oxygen just leaves the thylakoid as the concentration builds. Photosynthesis 1 also traps light energy. And now a phosphate molecule is going to attach to the active site of our ATP synthase. And something really, really, really important is going to occur. Because we've built up a concentration of hydrogen ions inside of our thylakoid, and they can't leave because they're an ion, they're highly charged. So the hydrogen ion can't just leave straight through the phospholipid bilayer. It has to go through a protein channel. In this case, it can go through the channel that is provided by ATP synthase. But the movement of those hydrogen ions will provide energy to build ATP. You see, as the molecules of hydrogen are trying to spread out, they have actually potential energy in that. And as they do spread out, that potential energy is converted to kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion, and that powers our ATP synthase. Just like how water can power a water mill to grind up grain or something of the sort, this is actually going to be powered by the movement of hydrogen ions through it. So hydrogen ions are going to pass out of the thylakoid into the stroma, and that turns ATP synthase, and it ends up producing ATP. Next, the hydrogen ions that have released, they are going to bond with this molecule right here called NADP+, and become NADPH, which is another energy-carrying molecule. So the light-dependent reactions produce two energy-carrying molecules, two energy transfer molecules, ATP and NADPH. All through the breaking down of water, releasing oxygen, and building up that hydrogen ion concentration. That is one of the main ways the chloroplast is able to produce these energy-carrying molecules. So in summary of all that, photosynthesis, remember, it occurs in our chloroplast. Specifically, what we were looking at is the light-dependent reactions which take place in the thylakoid. On the thylakoid membrane is where we have the electron transport chain, and it's within the thylakoid that we would be building up that hydrogen ion concentration so that way they can power as they go down the concentration gradient through the ATP synthase, it will provide the energy required for ATP synthase to function and build ATP from an adenosine diphosphate and another phosphate. And the hydrogen ions and the electrons that have gone through the electron transport chain, they are going to build another energy-carrying molecule called NADPH. And that is the first stage of photosynthesis, the light-dependent reactions. On that note, catch you next time. Be awesome, stay awesome.